Testing, testing. Okay, hi everyone. So 9:05 is started. So we will start our virtual train the trainer now. So I checked that the mic is working, so I think everyone can hear me. So on your left side of the video there is a chat box. So if you have any questions throughout the TTT session, you can leave your message in the chat box. You need to log in any Google account to be able to leave a comment. So if you not yet, you can log in now. Okay, so throughout this session, it will be around 1 hour to 1 hour 30 minutes at maximum. So we'll cover a few topics which I will let you know very soon. Okay, so okay, good. Some of you can already comment. Good. All right. So now we will start virtual trainer. So thank you everyone who attended this session. So first of all, let me just briefly introduce myself. Maybe you haven't seen me or heard from me before. So my name is JT. So I'm current MCVP TM and OD of AIESEC in Korea. And previously I have around 4 years of experience in AIESEC and also have facilitated a few one international and a few national and local conferences. So hopefully you can ask more questions if you have any uncertainties throughout this session, because this session is totally for you to learn about how to facilitate better sessions for your LC. Hi everyone, good. I see around 3 or 4 LCs already here. Okay, so without further ado, I will just briefly introduce like why I propose to have this train the trainer session for every LC. First of all, this session for train the trainer is not just for induction, but for this time, the purpose of letting you guys know how to become a better FASI is to apply in the upcoming induction day for LC. So if you're not sure what is talent induction, in short, it's basically an official welcoming and introduction of AIESEC to your new members who are just recruited, so that you can prepare them for their first AIESEC experience. So in induction day itself, it is also their very first touch point with AIESEC officially. So throughout this trainer, you can experience like how can you become a better FASI, that you can deliver a better session for them. So why induction is so important for you to really do it so well, that from MC side we actually want to have a training for you to become a better FASI. First of all, it's that in induction itself, you want to introduce the organization, which is AIESEC in Korea, and also give the ownership of AIESEC and leadership development to these new members, so that they really understand why we do what we do and how to do what we do, like for example, or facilitating a leadership experience, how to run exchange, and also what are we actually doing in AIESEC. So to really deliver the message clearly, it's really important to have a team of good FASIs with very good facilitating skills to make sure that the session delivery is good enough, so that new members who are first time joining any AIESEC conference or AIESEC event, they will get more clear input from you guys. Second thing is to welcome and support new members to become more familiar with AIESEC culture and environment. So in induction itself, it is not like any LCM you do, because this will be the first touch point, and they might be afraid of some AIESEC culture like roll calls, dancers, games. So in this induction, it's very important for you as the facilitator, or if you are EB, to showcase this AIESEC culture to the new members. So the last thing is that you want to provide a good first impression to the new members and make them feel excited to start their AIESEC journey. And as you see, from the previous research, it shows that most people in AIESEC in Korea, they only join AIESEC for like 1 to 2 years usually. And it's very rare that people join AIESEC in LC level for like 3 to 4 years, maybe because they lose the excitement already. So you really want to give them a very excited impression and keep them in the organization. And this all starts with the first touch point, which is induction. So I would like to share with you a little bit more about what is actually a role of facilitator in induction or any other conferences. So maybe in your mind, you feel like as a faci, you are there to deliver some content to the members or delegates, or you are here to educate some of them and even provide some motivation. However, I will say these are correct, but not 100%. So yes, a faci, you will deliver content, you will deliver education, you will do motivation, but in the end, this is not what only faci do. Because now, if you only do 3 of these, you are basically only teaching your delegates something, but it's not really 100% what a faci does. So what actually a good facilitator will do is that you should achieve the overall conference objective through your session. So in here, maybe induction is not a conference, but it is a event that have certain kind of agenda. So you want to achieve the whole induction objective through your session delivery, right? You don't want to just randomly deliver some PPT and then you assume that the members or the delegates are happy and they learn something. So make sure that a good faci will make sure that all the conference objectives are achieved. So the second main point is that the faci will achieve the individual session objective by facilitating the flow of the session. So maybe in the beginning you thought that by facilitating means as long as I have my PPT, as long as I know what do I need to say, then I can deliver a session well enough. The answer is not that easy, because a good session is not about the facilitator talking all the way, but it's actually how you make the delegates learn through your session by facilitating the discussion, the flow, but not giving everything 100% from yourself. So the third thing, and also very important, is you actually enable and facilitate their learning process and change their behavior positively. So what does this mean is that in the learning process, of course, when you deliver a session, they will learn something, but they should go through the process by themselves. And as a faci, you are helping them to achieve that. So if your session is 100% reading by you, 100% videos, it's all by you, but there's no activity, there's no action from the delegates. So basically, they cannot learn that well. And secondly, you want them to change their behavior to better. For example, if you want to deliver something about leadership, how to lead a team, you want your delegates to know how to lead a team and change their behavior in management in the future. So in the end, a successful session is that the delegates actually change after attending the session, but not just feel happy or satisfied during the session. So I hope that's clear about the role of a faci. So throughout today's virtual Train the Trainer, we have a few topics that I will cover. First of all is session design, which you will learn briefly about how do you design a session from nothing, from beginning until the end. The second part will be how do you identify learning style and make sure that your session actually help to achieve the objective through having different kind of learning style that is suitable for delegates. The third thing will be how do you use different delivery methods so that your session will not be boring, and also the delegates will be able to learn much faster with very interesting content. And lastly, will be how do you close the session by doing a good debrief. So this will be the next 1 hour's contents. So if you have any questions after each part, I will open up maybe some time for you to ask questions regarding these contents, all right? Okay, so now let's start with session design. So if you see the chart here, this is what usually first timer Faci does, where you might think that when you want to design or deliver a session, you just complete your PPT and then practice maybe, and then during the conference or the event itself, you just deliver the session. So actually, it's way more than this because there are more steps before you design a PPT, and PPT actually is the last part of a session design. So I'll show you what I mean by this. First of all, you need to understand what are the objectives of your conference or your session. That's the very first part. Because if you do not know where you want to achieve, what is the behavior change you want the delegates to be, what the delegates should learn in this session itself, you don't have a clear direction where you want to lead the session. In the end, if you don't know what is objective and you deliver the session will be very messy, and delegates will not be able to understand what actually you want to deliver in this session, what actually you want me to learn in this session. They will be only capturing something that is like vague and also unclear. So the first point is to ensure you talk to your agenda manager. Usually in a conference or an event like induction, there's always an agenda manager, like it could be your LCVP-TM or LCP or someone who manage the whole agenda flow. So make sure you clarify with your agenda manager what is your session objective. Okay, so the second thing is to do some kind of research, because if you do not know, you do not have enough information, you might not be able to put all these contents into your session. So maybe you need to ask someone about these particular topics, or you need to do some research about other entity. Do they have any good case practice they can share with you, for example? So this is just a middle part. The main part is doing the session outline. So it's not the PPT yet. Session outline is a very simple table where you fill in what consists of the whole session. I will show a very simple session outline later and explain how do you use it as a Faci. So in session outline, you actually draft out everything that will happen in the session, like how much time you need for this session, how many blocks you have. Like the first part is introduction, the second part is blah, 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 and then you close the session. So, and then what kind of delivery method you use, and what kind of content and flow you will use in this whole session. So basically, it's a documented outline where you plan your session before you create a PPT. So after you finish your session outline, your agenda manager or your leader should give a feedback based on what you have done to see if this session outline will be able to achieve your session objective or link to the whole conference objective. Sometimes your session is really good, but it might not be suitable to achieve this objective. Maybe you gone another way. So after that, your agenda manager will give you some feedback based on the outline, and you should revise the outline based on the feedback. And finally, you are going to create a PPT. So PPT is a very last step before you go to session delivery in the conference. All right. So of course, you need if you are not very experienced, you of course need a lot of practice. Even very experienced Faci needs a lot of practice to make sure the flow is smooth enough. So practice, and sorry, I didn't change the word. It should be session delivery. So the last part is session delivery, which is the fifth box. Okay, please wait a second. I'm changing now. Okay. Never mind, I'll change it later. But the main thing is the biggest box there. The fifth box is session delivery during the conference. And after delivery, after the whole conference itself, your Faci team should sit down and evaluate how was the session delivery just now. And if possible, you should always collect feedback from the delegates so that you will know what to improve for your facilitation next time. So I hope that's clear for the whole Faci flow. From the beginning, you identify objective until the end, you evaluate how good is your session. And based on that, you take the feedback and change it next time. So, but today in this TTT, I would like to highlight on the session outline because it's the really key component that you should know how to fill in as a Faci. Okay, so I will show you how it looks like as a session outline. So this is a very simple session outline table. I didn't fill in everything, but I just like to show you how it's being filled. So you can see there are around 7 boxes, 7 columns. The first thing is block. So block means how many parts in that session you have. For example, if you have a 1 hour session, maybe you have around 3 to 4 different blocks that you conduct different things during the session. For example, you start maybe with an introduction of what is the session about, or introduction of the background of this session. And maybe you move to the second part of the block. Like, for example, I show here is why of AIESEC. So this is 1 block of the session. So the duration is how many minutes you need to use for this block of session. And the total time should be slightly less than your time given. If you are given 60 minutes, like 1 hour session, you should try to complete your session by latest 55 minutes, because you should always put like maybe 5 minutes time for emergency. Sometimes there's some delay. So if you use this, you always will have extra 5 minutes as a backup. So goals and content are 2 different things. Goals is somehow like an objective. In the end of this block, what do you want the delegates to achieve? Or what do you want to achieve in this block? For example, in the block of why of AIESEC, I want the delegates to understand why AIESEC exists until today. But in the goal itself, it doesn't have anything about what will I do inside. It's just, in the end, what are the goals will I achieve in this block? So the content will be the detailed explanation of how would you bring out this session. For example, in here, I just give a very short sample, like maybe the first part is I will show a video, and then the delegates are separated into groups of 5. And then the delegates are given a topic of discussion about maybe the issues about happening in South Korea, for example. So I list down every single step, what will I deliver in that block. Okay, so here the most detailed part is content. And then Faci is, if you have 2 or 3 Facis in the same session, you should list down in this block which Faci is in charge. Is it all Faci or just one of them? All right. So second last will be method. Method will be what kind of delivery method you use to facilitate this block. And there are a total of 6 to 7 different kinds of delivery methods, which I will cover later part of the TTT today. And lastly will be materials. Means to make this session successful, what kind of materials you need to be provided. Maybe by the CC team, or maybe by your, I don't know, whoever organized the conference or the induction day, so that people can prepare these materials for you to use beforehand. So in conclusion, after you finish this session outline, you should read again to see, does the whole session connect to each other between the blocks? Read between the contents. Does introduction connect to the next part smoothly? So if everything is okay, check whether the content, everything is achieving the overall objective of the session, which is the goals you want to achieve. All right. So in the end, if the agenda manager noticed that your content actually is not suitable for this session objective, so you should change your session outline first before thinking to even create PPT, because you will waste your time to create many times PPT if the session is not good enough. All right. So that's all about session outline. And based on this, you should always practice your sessions based on session outline as well, so that in each block, you will not extend your time beyond what is allocated. Like introduction is 10 minutes, so you should try to finish your introduction by 10 minutes, not longer than that or not too short. So all in all, this is the first part of the session. It is about how do you design a session from beginning to the end. So of course, if you are interested to become agenda manager, if you're LCVP TM, for example, your job will be to review every single session outline that your faci already prepared, so that you need to connect the whole session outline, everything, to see does this achieve the whole event or conference objective. So it's that simple. All right. So far that is the end of the first part, which is session design. If you have any questions, you can type in the chat box now. While if you don't have yet, maybe we'll move on to the next part, and you can ask questions at the end of the TTT as well. So I'll give you maybe 30 seconds. If you have any questions, you can type in the chat box, and after 30 seconds, I will continue the next part if there's no question. Okay, I think there's no question so far. Good. So we will move on to the next part, which is learning style. So learning style is basically in this word itself, every person has different style of and preference for learning. Meaning, if you have 60 delegates, maybe all of them have different kind of preference for learning. So in general, if you only deliver a session for one kind of style, you only achieve how to say, the session will only achieve maybe 30% of its potential. Maybe only 30% of the people in the plenary will feel connected to your session, because the style you use is too singular. It's not diverse enough. So here I'll introduce to you 3 different styles that most people apply to, and when you create a session with these 3 different styles together, it will be the best. It will be the more effective session for everyone. So the first style will be visual. So a lot of people are visual kind of learning style, where they require more visual and also graphical design in the PPT, for example. Meaning, if you are talking too much, but there's nothing on the screen that shows something interesting, this kind of people cannot learn that well. For example, take a look at this slide. For example, if you want to deliver a session on how to date girls, for example, and then you put a lot of text, like full screen of text, and you keep repeating the things, like you keep reading it, these are not visually attractive enough. For visual people, this is not attractive, and they are not going to learn quick enough, because they just can't absorb everything by listening or looking at things that are not attractive. So if you want to improve this session to appeal to like visual people, you should make it more visual, more graphical, and then make sure that words are easy to read, the content are easy to read, and then the color, everything is comfortable to the eyes. So when you make sure that your PPT and then your presentation is good looking, you are already successful 30%, because the visual people will feel connected to your session, because they can learn faster by having this kind of more graphical presentation. And of course, this does not mean it's only applied to PPT. You can also use things like pictures, video, showcasing, acting, for example, if you are good in drama, for example, acting. So these kind of things are visual, and it will affect your session very much. And of course, the way you present yourself as a faci, how you wear and how you walk on the stage is also something visual. So the second style is audio. So audio is very self-explanatory. People who prefer audio style, they are very much they learn faster by listening and then also speaking themselves. So they enjoy discussion and prefer to communicate through spoken language. And then also they learn by listening and asking questions. In the end, they also need to be heard. So if let's say your session is all about you talking alone, but the delegates do not have a chance to talk, these audio style delegates might not be able to learn that fast because they don't get to feel involved in this session itself. And same to the previous one, you can use things like video and also songs to music or songs to actually enhance your whole session by making it more diverse. So audio is pretty easy to achieve by making sure that you have a combination of visual and audio. And then you can even put some musics or videos and make sure when you're facilitating, your voice is easily heard by everyone in the room itself. So if you are presenting in a hall that's very huge, I suggest you to always use a mic instead of just use your own voice because people at the behind cannot really hear what you're saying. So this is related to that as well. So the last style will be kinesthetic. So you can see in the picture, kinesthetic style is someone who prefer activities and action. So these people, they learn by doing, moving, or touching, or acting out something. So these people, maybe visual and audio are not good enough for them. They need to practice and also be a part of the activity. So if your session has some activity like role play or games or walk around and also team activities, this will help kinesthetic people to learn better and faster. And by having kinesthetic, actually it makes the whole session more lively and people are not just sitting down for the whole 1 or 2 hours. So in conclusion, these are the three main styles that most human apply to. If you are human, most likely you will prefer at least one of these. So that's why if you want your session to be more effective, you should combine at least two of these learning styles to have at least visual and audio, visual, kinesthetic, or even all three of them. So in the end, your session will appeal to most of the delegates in the house and make sure that they can capture the learning much better. All right, so now that's the end of the second part of TtT today. And in the first part, I mentioned about how you can design a session using session outline. And the second part is all about how you combine different styles of learning in your session itself. So far, do you have any questions? Okay, since there's no question, then very good. We'll move on quickly to the next part, which is delivery methods. So delivery methods I think, is one of the most important TtT session that I will recommend to you, because by having different kind of delivery methods, you can make sure that your session is more lively and it's not just the normal presentation style, like always reading the slides and then always sit down and discuss. There will be a lot of different things you can use to deliver a session. So first of all, I would like to introduce you to these 6 pictures. I will tell you one by one each of them. So first of all, you can see there's a brain there, and this is exactly brainstorming. So the first delivery method you can use is called brainstorming. And if you're not familiar with brainstorming, basically brainstorming is an activity where you can let the delegates to come up with as many ideas as possible as a group. So it requires the delegates to be separated into small groups if possible, so that they can have a better brainstorming session. So how does brainstorming works is that usually brainstorming comes with a very clear question. Like for example, if you want your delegates to brainstorm on some ideas on how to do better OGV promotion. So maybe the question is, what are the ways we can promote inside our university? So have a very clear question that people can think based on that. And then secondly, you set a limited time. For example, you allow maybe 15 minutes of total time so that people will have the sense of urgency to put down every ideas they have in the paper. So brainstorming also works with like coming up with creating solutions, creative solutions. Sorry, there's a typo. So if you want some creative solutions, brainstorming works really well because it does not allow anyone to discriminate, meaning any idea is okay in brainstorming, even though they sound stupid. And lastly, you should wrap up the brainstorming by consolidating what kind of contents you have. So after a brainstorming, there will be a lot of different ideas. So it's good to wrap up for each team to choose similar ideas among each other, or maybe the top ideas that is selected. So the important thing you need to take note is that in a brainstorming, there's no idea that is silly. So every idea is equally important. So all members or delegates inside a brainstorm, they should immediately write down all their ideas, no matter they feel it's stupid themselves or not. So for example, I have an idea, if I want to do OGV promotion, maybe I can put a TV advertisement in our school. Maybe it is too expensive. Maybe it's too stupid. But you, without judging, you just write down your idea and put down on a flip chart or a post-it note. So every idea should be there, no matter how stupid are they. And one more point is that you should have no discussion until the time is up. So if you have 15 minutes of brainstorming, in the whole 15 minutes, all delegates should keep quiet and write their own idea first. So after 15 minutes, they can start discussing like, I have this kind of ideas. So what kind of ideas you have? The reason that we shouldn't discuss before the time is up is so that sometimes when one person starts to discuss on one topic, the whole group will only discuss on that single topic itself. And in the end, you only have one idea. So the purpose of brainstorming is to have really a lot of ideas so that you can have a lot of choices for your session. So this kind of activity like brainstorming is suitable for idea generation session, or for example, you want to create many ideas for promotion, or you want to create a team vision, or you want to be bottom up to have many kinds of like new ideas from the members. So you can use brainstorming for these kind of activities. So of course, if you use brainstorming, as a faci, you need to know how do you facilitate each of the small groups. It is better to have one leader in the group itself to lead the discussion after the brainstorming is finished, so that the whole brainstorming have an output instead of just like countless of ideas. Okay, so this is the first one, which is brainstorming. The second delivery method is small group discussion, which a lot of us are already familiar with this. So what is small group discussion is that you have a discussion as a group to achieve a certain solution and also challenge the thinking of the group members. So in small group discussion, you want them to discuss not just one solution, but more like you want more quality discussion so that people can share their ideas, as well as challenge each other how they think. And it is very different from brainstorming, because here you don't want too many ideas. You want some conclusion out of this small group discussion. So how do you facilitate a small group discussion is that first, you should always ask open-ended questions. Open-ended questions means questions that do not have only one or two answers. Like open-ended questions are like, how can we do our promotion better? These are open-ended questions. But closed-ended questions are, for example, is open booth the best way? So this question, there are only two answers, yes or no. Is open booth the best way to do promotion? So there are only two answers, right? Yes, it's good. No, it's not good. So it's only two. So this is a closed-ended. So always ask open-ended questions so that they have more space to discuss. And your small group discussion should be around 3 to 6 people. If you have more than 6 people, it is no longer a small group, and not each of the member can share their ideas anymore. Maybe one or two people, they do not have the chance to speak. So always set the duration or time or date time for the discussion. Maybe you want to set 20 minutes, 25 minutes, so that everyone have almost some time to share their ideas. So as a FASI, you should also walk around and listen to the discussion so that you can get a rough idea how the discussion are going on. And if you notice that the discussion is going to a wrong direction, as a FASI, you can always bring them back to the right direction. And this small group discussion also work very well with a leader in the group, or maybe a group FASI who help facilitate the whole discussion itself. Lastly, you can give some clarifications if they have any questions about the discussion or they're unclear what you actually want them to discuss. So if you have a small group discussion, it would be good to put the open-ended questions on the PPT itself and make sure everyone can see it all the time during the discussion. Okay, so 3 important notes that you should take note when you are facilitating using this method is that your questions should be always interesting and relevant. Meaning you should make sure that this question has certain objective why you want to ask this question, and the answer of this question should help you to achieve the session objective. You shouldn't just put a discussion because you think that if you don't put a discussion it will be too boring or you have too much time. If you think that, meaning your session is not designed well enough. So every time if there's a discussion, the output should be useful for the delegates or for the whole entity itself. Secondly, you should always practice the instructions so that people understand what you want them to achieve in the discussion. And make sure you give enough time for sharing, because I noticed that some FASI actually only give like 5 to 10 minutes for discussion. And in the end, not everyone have the equal time to actually discuss in the team. And after group discussion, they do not have any chance to share with the plenary. So in the end, the discussion seems like something useless because you only discuss for like 5 minutes and there's no output that they can use. All right. So in for small group discussion, it's more suitable for like sharing of experience, discussing an issue so that you want to achieve certain solutions, and then also maybe debating on certain topics. So make sure that this kind of how to say small group discussion is not overly used because you feel like you need something to make it interesting, but you need some output out of the discussion. Okay, so now we have covered 2 out of 6 of those delivery methods. I hope I'm not going too fast. So if you feel like you cannot catch up, make sure you leave a comment there so I can explain better for you. Okay. So the third activity or delivery method you can use is games. So game is a very interactive activity because people feel fun and it's also very interesting. So what is game is that it's a tool used to encourage proactive participation and learning. So games are more suitable for example, you want to make them realize the importance of teamwork, the importance of communication, or those kind of skills session or skills training. If you use games, it will be easy to let them absorb because they are actively playing around with the things that you ask them to do. And after that, they actually realize that in the game itself, they learn something. So how does games work is that games always need to follow up by another method, meaning you cannot just use games for the whole session, but there's no other things that complement games. Because if you only play the games but you do not explain what happens after the game, they only remember the fun part, like, oh, I actually feel very tired in the game, I actually feel very fun, but they do not remember why I play this game. What are the learning points from this game I played? So make sure that you always follow up with another method, especially giving debrief. So the effective group size is depending on how your games is run. Sometimes you need a smaller team, sometimes a very big team, but make sure it is always group relate, like separated into groups, so that they can also learn from each other in a teammate. Okay, then always have very clear instructions and debriefing to make sure that no people are confused during the game, because some games are poorly designed that the instruction is not clear, things are not prepared well, and people cannot capture the learning really well because the game it was becoming very messy. So important things to take note is that you should take note of competition, whether do you want delegates to compete with each other or they shouldn't compete with each other. So there are some games that is better to have competition, some games are not. So you can see which one works for your session. And the game must be relevant to the objective. So again, like what I said just now, if you do not debrief properly after the game, they will not be able to know what you want them to learn throughout the game. If it's about effective communication, you should highlight in the game what things they do it well, what things they do it badly, to highlight the difference between different people in the game, so they can see the contrast. Oh, so this is means by um not effective communication. This means I can do better by doing another way around. Okay, so lastly, if let's say the game require a lot of like coordination, you might need more FASI to help you. Maybe you need 5 FASI to make sure your game is running well enough. Maybe you have station games or you need other FASI to help. So make sure that you prepare all the materials, printed materials or other things that you need, and also do a briefing to other facilitator who are helping you to make this session. Okay, so example of games, famous games you see in the past are like Marshmallow Challenge, Lego Challenge, Build the Tallest Tower, Human Pyramid, and also there are countless of many team building games available out there. So make sure when you do the game, you know the game how it's actually run, and you control the time as well, because playing games can easily go have like went out with a lot of delays in the games. And always make sure in the end of the game you still have maybe 10 to 15 minutes for sharing and debriefing. So I hope game for itself is clear for you, since it's one of the easiest to understand. Okay, so the next one is case study. So case study is something more high level in terms of difficulty, because it's more into analysis or discussion about a real case or about a scenario that the delegates might face in the future. So how case study works is that usually as a FASI, you should design the scenario or a case and print it out in paper. And during the session, you distribute to each of the group. And during the case study, based on the paper you give, they have a discussion about what they find out in the paper, what they find out in the case, and discuss on something you want them to discuss. For example, if the case is about if the case study is about global warming, like the whole world is rising in temperature because of something, maybe the case is a newspaper cutout that you give them. So you always have certain questions or discussion you want them to discuss based on this case. Here is, for example, is global warming. And also, other than questions, you can give them challenge, like come up with a project to solve this issue based on this case. So there are many ways to run a case study, but make sure that you always separate into smaller group so that they can work with other teammates to learn from each other. And in the end, they can do a big group sharing to everyone what they have learned throughout the case study. And of course, in the end, a debrief is a must to connect the case study to the session objective. What kind of learning you want them to know after studying all these different cases? For example, case study about other entity, how they do their exchange. It can be one example for case study. So 3 important notes you should remember is that always align with the learning objective, because case study can be difficult to understand. So FASI should always know what you want to connect to. And for all the cases, you must know the answer and the data you provide. You shouldn't provide something you don't understand, because during the session, the delegates might ask you questions. And take notes about the details of the materials you give, like what kind of details you actually give, like is it newspaper of 5 years ago, or you are actually giving them a video to watch or something. So make sure that all these things are prepared before you start the session. So some examples of case study you can use is like during LC simulation. You can use that to do exchange simulation or like functional simulations. So you can give them case like, for example, our LC is only doing 2 exchange 1 year. So we want to improve our exchange operations. So people can use this to study on the case how they can improve the situation. And then it can also be useful for transition for your next EB team to case study on real information or real case happening in the LC itself. Okay, so now is the fourth delivery method. We have only 2 more left. So the next one is role play. So role play is a very interesting delivery method you can use, which it means short interactions of delegates who play different roles to explore certain issues or practice some skills. So basically in the role play, you have people acting like certain profile. For example, between EP and EP manager, or between a company and a salesperson or something like that. So your delegates or the faci actually act out as a role. So how does it work is that you give very specific instruction to all the delegates and make sure that the instruction is specific enough to mention what kind of behavior they should do and what kind of like personality or actions that they should do when they are role playing that person. And as a faci, you can cue when to stop role playing, when to start role playing, and it's very important to change the rules during the role play. For example, um, this person after 5 minutes you cannot speak anymore. So what will happen after that? Or maybe you can switch the role after that, like the EP become EP manager, and EP manager become EP. So how do they feel after that when they change their personality during the role play? And last, which is a very important element in role play, is to provide feedback to the people who already role play. Because when they role play, they're acting as the person they are supposed to act like. And in the end, when you provide feedback to them, they actually can learn like, this is how I can become better in the role I play as an EP manager, for example. So something important to take note is that in role play, you should keep it realistic so that people can feel that this is actually the real situation when I'm doing my exchange or when I'm running in my function. So give very clear roles and responsibility for the person who are acting out certain roles. And if you're acting something funny, don't embarrass the participants, like make a joke of them or something, because they are just acting based on the instruction. And lastly, to have a discussion and debrief so that they can recap what do they observe during the role play. And during role play, it's not necessary that the whole delegation, every delegates are involved in the role play. Some people can actually be observer or actually note taker to actually write down notes that they observe during the role play session. All right. Yeah. So the example one I can think of is you can use that to role play EP and EP manager, and then also like sales training or different kind of activities that people can feel how is it like being the person in the story itself. Okay, so now come to the last, I think it's the last delivery method, which is demonstration. So demonstration, if you're not familiar with this word, is basically a showcase of an activity to show your delegates how something is being done. Okay, so you show someone how to do something, it's a demonstration. So how does demonstration work is that you show something step by step, and usually it's live showing so that they can see how do they achieve certain things by following what you do. So always allow a space for question and answer, Q&A. So they can ask questions like how do they achieve that specific step. And during the demonstration, you can also let the participants try following your demonstration. Like after you demonstrate, you can let them try out with themselves. So this is one way of delivery session as well. And the important note is that you should practice a lot so that your demonstration will not fail in front of the delegates, because they are actually learning from what you show them. So if you fail, they will not be able to understand perfectly well, since you are showing a wrong demonstration, wrong example. And secondly, ensure it's clearly presented. If you're using screenshots or like pictures, make sure it's very clear and sharp. And if you're using video, make sure it's high definition, like HD enough. And then avoid having a demonstration that is too long, like 1 hour demonstration or half an hour demonstration, because if that too long, people cannot capture what you want them to follow anymore, right? So some of the example of demonstrations is that you can use demonstration method for XPA education, for example, technical demonstrations like something very technical in your function, or for example, how to do company sales, how to talk to company CEO, for example, how to attend sales meeting, how to do open booth, how to sell OGV to open booth students, for example. These are all easily demonstrated in this delivery method. All right. So yeah, very long. I've been babbling for like 20 minutes about delivery methods. So in conclusion, there are 6 major delivery methods that you can mix and match to make your session more interesting. So there are two different um, there are two more methods I didn't mention here, because I think they are too much for you to understand in just 1 hour session. But I will just mention so that you can look it yourself later. But most likely you already know. The first one is just lecture style presentation. It means you are just presenting slides and reading and explaining something. And presentation or lecture style works if you are actually giving something very text based, or how to say, very direct, something that you just want them to read it and understand, but you don't need to have certain kind of activities. For example, AIESEC history, or maybe your LC history, something that is very straightforward. So that is called lecture style, where you are teaching someone something by just presenting. But take note that presentation style is only efficient for less than 15 minutes, meaning in a session itself, you shouldn't have a lecture style method that is longer than 15 minutes. If you're only talking to the delegates for more than 15 minutes, your session is most likely going to be boring very soon. So you should mix lecture style with other delivery methods. And the second one that I left out is storytelling. Basically, you tell a story to the delegates and connect the story back to your session later. So it is a different method that is more suitable for experienced facilitator, which has a lot of different stories to tell. So here I'm not including that. If you are willing to know, maybe you can search around online, and also you can send me an email if you want to know more about storytelling. All right. Okay. So that is the third part of the TTT today. We're almost at the end because we only have one last part yet. So far, for this 6 delivery method, do you guys have any questions you want to ask? I'll open for like 30 seconds for you to type the question down. No questions so far? Okay, so if there's no question, I will proceed with the next one, which is the last part of TTT. So last part is about debriefing. So one thing you need to remember when delivering a 1 or 2 hours long sessions, usually your session is at least 1 hour long. So you can see the attention curve of normal students or normal delegates is that in the beginning, they are really paying attention to your session because it's just the beginning of the session. But after 10 or 20 minutes, they start to feel boring, they start to get distracted, and they start to play their phones. So, and only at the end of the session, they start to pay attention because it's almost the end. So this is the most important part after the session. Like in the last part of the session, the debriefing is really important to make sure that the delegates can capture what they learn in the whole session in this debrief. So there are a few of the debriefing methods I can share with you. So when you do debriefing, the most important objective of debriefing is to make sure that people can capture what is the overall objective of the session. So if a session is for like 2 hours, they might have forgotten the first half an hour what they have done. So debriefing actually make them recap again what they have learned throughout the session and give them a space for thinking as well, what they can do after the session. So the first method is pair and share. And pair and share is very direct, meaning you pair up two people in the delegates, everyone have their own pair, and you ask them certain questions to make them think and discuss so that they can share with each other what they learned throughout the session. So this kind of debriefing actually brings the audience and your delegate to the right direction where they will discover again what they actually learned with their partner. So they sometimes they might not be able to understand 100% themselves, but when they share with another person, they will realize more things out of the session. So always ask a very related and guiding questions to make sure that this sharing is fruitful and they can ask each other this question and share with each other. So pair and share is the one of the easiest debriefing because you actually allow them to debrief for themselves. You just ask the right question. Okay. So the second thing is doing a short summary. So the rule of thumb is that in your summary, you should have maximum of 3 points of summary. So you can use 3 points to give a summary of a whole session. Like if you are doing a session on how to communicate better. So maybe the recap of the summary is that the 3 points, how can you become a better communicator? And you can choose to use different kind of words and rephrase so that delegates who understand certain words, they can understand the whole thing itself. Maybe sometimes they don't understand the previous part, but when you debrief, they understand it 100%. So the next part, the third thing is you can debrief using different related media. So for example, if we are talking about there are these two pictures here. The first one is like the hero's journey. So this is about how everyone will face difficulty, and also in the end they will, if they work hard enough, they will become a hero. So this is an example of one picture that summarizes the whole session itself. Or if a session is about value delivery and you showcase the picture of inner outer journey again and do your recap or debrief based on one picture, it will be easy for them to remember that picture in the future. So this is using media, and it's not limited to pictures. You can also use video to recap the whole session, a video that's relevant to your session. And the fourth one will be connecting the dots. So if you are doing something like training session, or for example, how to run global volunteer, and or even like activities that have sequence, you can use connecting the dot to make sure that people actually remember the beginning until the end. So you can give the first thing, which is like in this picture is just an example. It's not really a session, but more like the first part is the beginning of the session. And then you can ask them, do you remember what happened after that? so they can remember, oh, after that we play a game, and you can ask more questions like what happened during the game. So in this case, they will recap for themselves step by step throughout the session until the end of the session. And if you have a whiteboard there, you can also draw on the whiteboard when the delegates are speaking and replying you what you have asked. So this way is a very interactive debriefing where it's the same, you don't debrief for them, but you help the delegates to debrief for themselves. And the last one will be open space, where you allow the delegates to ask questions about things they are not clear with or they do not understand. So this is more suitable for technical sessions like demonstration or education session, where they can ask more questions about this. Okay, so in the end, these are the 5 different debriefing methods. And I would like to stress again that if your session do not have a debrief, you shouldn't have a session, because you are basically leaving them hanging during the session. They will not remember very well if you do not debrief in the end of session. So whenever you are designing any session, make sure you have at least 5 minutes just to debrief the session. All right. Do not end the session with a game, and do not end the session with a video that has no explanation, for example. All right. So that's the end of the train the trainer topics today. We have gone through how do you use session outline to design a session, how do you include 3 different learning styles, which are visual, audio, and kinesthetic, into a session so that you make it more interesting and effective. And third is how do you use 6 or 7 different delivery methods in your sessions so that it will be more interesting and suitable for the purpose of your session. And last but not least, give debriefing on every end of the session so that people can recap their learning and remember what they learned throughout the session, and in the end, take action after that. Okay, so that's the end of the TTT today. We have covered 4 topics. And lastly, now if you have any questions, you can still fill in, type in the chat box and I will answer you immediately. If you have no questions, then that's the end of the TTT. And I noticed that there are not many people attending today. Maybe it's because the last minute notice today. But this video will be is already recorded in YouTube. So you can also share with your EB team members who are not here, who will be becoming FASI for induction day. All right. So I'll be waiting for like maximum 5 minutes. If you have any question, you can put it here. If not, that's the end of the TTT. Thank you very much for attending today.